You know, I was once on a night out with a good friend of mine in Dundee, and everything was going great until some prick decided we should do a round of sake. Okay, it was me. And no sooner had my friend downed his shot, than he promptly made a beeline for the toilets and didn't come out for a good 20 minutes. And when he did, he looked like an extra from The Walking Dead. Things were looking grim until we went into a nightclub, and for some reason they had a fucking hot dog stand set up near the dance floor. I'm not kidding, this really fucking happened. Anyway, 2 sticks of reprocessed meat and bread later, and my friend was right as rain, and we went on to have a blinding night out. Then we fell out on the way home, had a really clumsy punch up, and he tried to bite my fucking ear off, which made staying the night at his flat a bit awkward, let me tell you. The point here is that just because something starts out on the wrong foot doesn't mean it can't turn things around and come good later. It also means the potential for fuck-ups on the home stretch is never far away. Which brings me neatly along to WandaVision, a show that's changed my opinion more times than I've changed my underwear this week. Back when it was first announced as part of the 50 or 60 other shows churned out by post-Endgame Marvel, I have to admit I was completely put off, not just by the goofy 1950s aesthetic, but the fact that the show was based around 2 characters that I never particularly cared about in the first place. But then it came out and people started raving about it, so I was like, what the fuck, let's give it a try. And then I watched it, and with each passing episode, I found myself getting more and more intrigued by the mysterious premise. Where and when exactly are Wanda and Vision now? What kind of crazy dream world are they trapped in, and who put them there? If I didn't know better, I'd say Marvel had actually taken a risk on something, managing to produce something that was smart, creative, and quirky. A show that genuinely had me wondering what kind of mind-blowing revelation it was leading up to. And then I saw the season finale, and it all just kind of fell apart like a drunken, obese elephant landing on a house of cards, leaving me with a single burning question. What the fuck was the point in all of this? Anyway, I guess you're looking for some kind of explanation here. Needless to say, I'll be spoiling most of the show because I'm an asshole and it's kind of what I do. So if you don't want to know what happens, you know what to do. WandaVision kicks off in the format of a cheesy 1950s sitcom. Wanda and Vision now live together in suburban America as husband and wife, doing their best to fit in and keep their powers and abilities hidden from everyone around them. Wait, I thought Vision was supposed to be dead. Nah, whatever. So there's all the usual bullshit tropes you'd expect from sitcoms of the time. The cliched dialogue, the slapstick humour, the canned laughter, and the overly friendly neighbours. But all is not quite right in the world of WandaVision. Vision himself goes off to work each day without really understanding what his job is, and begins to question his purpose here, while Wanda starts to hear voices speaking to her through the radio and accidentally uses her abilities in front of people. Skip forward a couple of episodes, and the homely black and white 1950s have given way to the Technicolor 70s. Things get even weirder when Wanda mysteriously falls pregnant out of nowhere, only to go into labour and deliver twins within a matter of hours. And when a stranger shows up and starts to question Wanda about past events, she reacts violently in response. That's when the show begins to open up and reveals what's actually happening here. Somehow Wanda has taken over a small town in America, erected a giant energy field around it, and converted it into her own personal fantasy world, where reality can alter according to her whim. She also broke into a storage facility and resurrected the corpse of Vision somehow. Even the town's residents have been reduced to meat puppets, forced against their will to act out the roles she assigns to them. Which sounds pretty fucking awful to be honest, but we'll get back to that one later. The point here is that the show is kind of divided into 2 strands. Outside the barrier, government forces led by generic evil white man have decided that Wanda represents a threat that has to be neutralized. You know, because of the whole enslaving an entire town thing. But luckily, a plucky band of diverse characters are on hand to stop him. Like the goofy FBI agent from Ant-Man, or the annoying friend from Thor, who tries so hard to be funny and quirky that it's kind of painful after a while. Or Monica Rambeau, who's basically in this show to get superpowers and set her up for Captain Marvel too. Meanwhile, on the inside of the barrier, Vision is starting to question the nature of his reality as Wanda struggles to hold the place together and fend off increasingly sophisticated attacks from the outside. Each new episode is presented in the format of a different decade as the family move rapidly through time, from the growing pains of the 1980s to Malcolm in the Middle for the 2000s, all the way up to Modern Family in the present. The action culminates with Wanda realising that she created this entire reality out of her grief for the death of Vision, and that releasing her grip on the town will cause her family to fade out of existence. Then the original Vision's body gets resurrected by energy harvested from the barrier, because I guess those things totally match up with each other, and he gets sent inside to take them out. Oh yeah, and there's also an actual witch that wants to suck Wanda's power out for herself.
And I killed Sparky too.
And then everyone has a big battle and stuff explodes before Wanda puts everything back to normal. Okay. Apart from Game of Thrones, I don't think I've ever seen a show start out so strong, only to fall apart so dramatically on the home stretch. What started out as a quirky, interesting mystery presented in an unusual format gradually developed into a poignant exploration of grief, the power of love and sacrifice, and the need for acceptance. Then it just kind of devolved into a generic mess of boring CGI fights, sky beams, generic dialogue, ridiculous antagonists, and blatant setups for future movies. So, pretty much a standard MCU movie then. And it's such a shame, because the show manages to do an awful lot of things right, perfectly capturing the look and feel of TV shows from the different decades, right down to the commercials that reference people and places from the MCU. The actors even changed their performances and mannerisms to suit the time period, and I love the growing realization from the two leads that something is deeply wrong with the disturbingly cheerful world around them. It begins with subtle moments where they start to doubt what they're doing, and then moves up to the appearance of strange people and objects, gradually building to a total collapse of their reality. It's smart and well paced, taking its time to lay the groundwork and handing out subtle clues along the way. It's just a shame that all that subtlety and careful preparation goes out the window in the final episodes. I have to admit, I never particularly cared about Wanda in the movies. She always seemed like a bit of a Johnny-come-lately, awkwardly inserted into a group of Avengers that didn't particularly need her, and given way too much narrative focus, with vague, poorly defined powers that allowed her to do, well, whatever the script needed her to do. I never found her particularly interesting as a character, and her romance with Vision felt forced and weird. I mean, it wasn't as bad as Bruce and Black Widow, but it wasn't far off either. But credit to the writers and Elizabeth Olsen for a great performance. They actually give Wanda emotional depth, an interesting character arc, and a likeable personality. Well, until you find out that she's basically a psychopathic dictator that enslaved an entire town and forced them to act out her twisted fantasy, all while remaining fully conscious of their horrific predicaments. Seriously, the scene where she has to walk out past them all at the end is one of the most awkward moments I think I've ever seen on TV, particularly because the script is still trying desperately to convince you that Wanda's a hero because she gave up her imaginary family to set them all free.
They'll never know what you sacrificed for them.
Yeah, fuck off, Monica. You don't just get to steal thousands of innocent lives because you're feeling a bit sad. Honestly, if this show is actually setting up the beginning of an evil turn for Wanda, then I'm all in with it, and fair play for having the balls to do something like that. But I can't shake the feeling that this is basically Steve Trevor from Wonder Woman 1984 on an even bigger scale, trying to sell basic human decency and respect for the lives of others as some kind of heroic sacrifice that should be applauded. Honestly, the more I think about it, the more it seems like evil generic white man was right about trying to kill her while they still have the chance. Because fuck knows what she's gonna do next time she gets sad. Ultimately, WandaVision is a fun but flawed show, whose chaotic and overblown ending failed to live up to its intriguing premise. It had good ideas, presented in a creative new way. The problem is that it didn't know how to tie them up in a dramatically satisfying conclusion. Instead, it unsuccessfully tries to mesh together different story elements that undermine rather than complement each other. The idea that grief and trauma can cause people to commit harmful acts without considering the consequences. The acknowledgement that trying to hide from pain and loss ultimately stifles the emotional growth needed to find acceptance and move on. Or the realization that happiness and prosperity without free will is fundamentally destructive. All of those are fine concepts to explore, but the problem is you kinda have to pick one and stick with it. You can't force all of them into one character and expect them to have a coherent arc at the ends. Otherwise, you'll just end up with a story that's trying to have its pint and drink it. And believe me, that shit never works out. Anyway, that's all I've got for today. Go away now.